Welcome to Data Driven Health RX. I'm Miguel Rosa. I'm a nurse practitioner entrepreneur, endurance athlete, founder of a small integrative health practice called Blue Zone Health and Wellness, and I'm someone who believes that your health data should work for you. So on this podcast, we're diving into wearable health tech, metabolic health, hormonal health, performance and longevity, and I'm going to be sharing a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like to build a cash-based practice while balancing a clinical career and training for a major triathlon event. Whether you're a patient, athlete, or a fellow healthcare provider, or just someone who wants to feel their best, stick around. This might be for you. Important topic of discussion before we dive in. Everything shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. As a nurse practitioner, my role here is to solely act as an educator, not your personal healthcare provider. Accessing this content does not create a patient-provider relationship between you, me, or Blue Zone Health and Wellness. Always consult with your personal healthcare provider for any medical decisions or before starting any treatments. Let's get to it. I'd really like to be clear about how I approach this. The way I see it, HRT is a tool. It's a powerful one, but it works best when we're also working on the sleep, the nutrition, the stress, the movement. You're probably going to get sick of hearing about it from me, but it's the truth. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Data Driven Health RX podcast. I'm Miguel, and if you caught the first episode, thank you for coming back. If you're new here, welcome. I'm glad that you found me. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about hormones. I know that word carries a lot of baggage for a lot of people, and there's a lot of confusion out there, a lot of fear. There's some bad information out there, some old information. So I just want to start at the beginning and kind of lay a foundation and some groundwork. Here's the thing that I don't think gets much attention. Our hormones don't really exist in a vacuum, right? They're not just doing their own thing independent of everything else in our lives. I mentioned in the last podcast episode our sleep, what we eat, moving our body, but also things like stress levels and relationships and time spent underneath artificial light or in front of the screens, blue light. And then there's things that we put into our bodies, cannabis, nicotine, alcohol, steroids, that all plays an impact. It's all either supporting hormonal health or working against it. And I think sometimes we just jump straight to, I need HRT, right? I need hormone replacement therapy without really understanding what's driving the dysfunction in the first place. So when we talk about stress, we're not just talking about, work deadlines and traffic. We're talking about the full picture. The physical stressors, the emotional stuff, and even the spiritual stuff, There's spiritual stress that plays a role. And sometimes stress can be, not getting enough sleep or dealing with a chronic infection that you might not even know that you had in the first place. Eating like crap because you're busy and it's just easier, sitting all day, that's going to play a factor. That low-grade anxiety of just existing in the modern world. All of that adds up in our bodies, Our bodies are keeping score and our hormones are often the first thing to take a hit. So if somebody comes to me and they say, my testosterone is low, or I think I'm in perimenopause, right? Yeah, we're going to look at your labs, but we're also going to talk about life. And, I can't just hand you a prescription and pretend that fixes everything if the foundation is crumbling. So that's why my intake form is a lot. If you filled it out, you know what I'm talking about. I'm asking about your history, your social history, your sexual history, your mental health. I know some of that can feel maybe a little bit invasive or, like, why does he need to know this? But it's for this exact reason. I can't really get a full picture if we're only looking at one piece. So that's where I say, healthcare is very personal. Your hormones are connected to all of this. How you're sleeping, what relationships look like, what stress load is like, what your mood has been like. Uh, Typically, that's not separate from your labs. It's all the same story. We use all of the information, subjective and objective data, to put it all together. So yeah, the intake is thorough, to say the least, but it's because I actually want to help you, not just write a prescription and send you on your way. So, for anyone who's brand new to this, HRT, it stands for hormone replacement therapy. It's pretty simple. As we age, our hormone levels, they naturally decline. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, thyroid hormones, they all shift over time. And for a lot of people, that decline comes with symptoms. It can include things like fatigue or brain fog, low libido, poor sleep, loss of muscle mass. The list goes on. But hormone replacement therapy is exactly what it sounds like. We're replacing what your body isn't making enough of anymore and bringing your levels back to a place where you actually feel good. You feel like yourself again. But I really like to be clear about how I approach this. HRT is not a quick fix in itself. And it's definitely not going to be a substitute for that foundational work that we just talked about. The way I see it, HRT is a tool. It's a powerful one, but it works best when we're also working on the sleep, the nutrition, the stress, the movement. You're probably going to get sick of hearing about it from me, but it's the truth. And sometimes we don't even have enough energy to get to that point. Maybe HRT can give you a little boost to create that energy and get that momentum going so that you can work on those things. When we use HRT on top of a solid foundation, that's when people really start to feel the difference. So my preference is not for, treating either or, it's really both. Optimizing your lifestyle and supporting your hormones. That's the approach. So I just want to take a step back and talk about something that, might feel a little bit nerdy, but I promise it might tie everything in together for you. Um, our hormones can only do their job if our metabolism's actually functioning properly, right? If our cells aren't able to produce the energy the way that they're supposed to, then nothing else really matters at that point, because the other stuff that we're doing just isn't going to land the way that it should. So when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about cellular energy and how our bodies actually create the fuel to function. So energy is our currency to life, essentially. Without it, we're toast. We're gone. So everything that our body does requires energy, whether it's thinking or moving or healing a wound or digesting your food. It's using some sort of energy. And the way that our cells produce the energy, determines whether we're operating at our best or just getting by. And that's determined on, there's two different pathways that our cells can make energy. One's pretty efficient and it's, runs nice and clean. And the other one's kind of a backup system that doesn't work as well. The efficient way, if you know anything about a cell, it works within the mitochondria. And you've probably heard that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. When everything's working good and it's working right, then it takes the glucose and turns it into energy. It's a clean process, good output. But the backup system, when things aren't really working, optimally, we're still making energy. It's just less energy. And we create this byproduct that's called lactic acid. You may have heard of that. Lactic acid, essentially, it's pretty inflammatory and it's hard on the body. So when we're healthy and our metabolism's working good, it's working well, then we're using that efficient pathway to make energy most of the time. But when we're stressed and our hormones are off, we're not sleeping, we're not eating well, that's when we start using that other pathway where we're building up a little bit more lactic acid. And over time, that's where the problems start. So with hormone replacement therapy, when our hormones are optimized, our mitochondria, it's working a little bit better. We're producing a little bit more energy. It's producing energy a little bit more efficiently. And, we're better equipped to handle stress without it completely wrecking us. And then when we combine that foundational work the sleep and the nutrition and the movement and you managing our stress, that's when you really start to see people starting to feel like themselves again. That's when you get the biggest bang for your buck. So if any of this is resonating with you and you're feeling like something might be off and you've been wanting to check your labs and you can't quite figure out what's going on, I'd love to talk with you. I want to be upfront. This stuff takes time. It might not be figured out in one visit or even within 6 months, if I'm being completely honest. It's not a quick fix, but you should start to notice subtle improvements that compound, over time, little by little. That's the goal. So my schedule is open through the end of March. If you book your initial appointment before the end of the year, I've set up my calendar to discount $50. So you'll see that the initial consultation, there's a $50 discount off of that as long as you book by the end of this year. So January 1st, disabling that link and it's going up to the full price. I guess I'll drop the link in the show notes so you can schedule if you're interested. Just be aware you do have to be in the state of Connecticut at the time of the appointment. I'll figure out how to drop that in the show notes or in the comments. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, anything you want to share, just drop them in the comments or reach out directly to me. You can email me at miguel@datadrivenhealthrx.com. The last time I forgot to mention .com. Maybe that's why I got no emails. But yeah, so that email is miguel@datadrivenhealthrx.com. I'd love to hear from you. Next episode, I'd like to talk a little bit about glucose and why it's not actually the bad guy that everyone makes it out to be. So it's going to be a good one. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening, whether on YouTube or Spotify, so you don't miss that episode. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me for this episode. I will catch you on the next one.